Welcome to LUTV News in Focus. We feature interesting topics on campus, in the community, and in the world of culture. I am Tommy Byers. Since 1876, the Texas Constitution has been amended 507 times. This November, 8 of the 218 constitutional amendments proposed during the regular session were certified for the ballot. Associate Professor of Political Science, Dr. James Nelson, joins us to help us better understand the importance of state elections and these 8 constitutional amendments. Welcome, Dr. Nelson. How's your day going?
Oh, pretty good so far.
So thousands turn out every year for the presidential election. So why should they also be turning out for local elections as well as state elections?
Well, as I tell my students in my state and local class and also in my intro classes and others, if you're not in one of the armed services and no one in your immediate family is, the local government has a way more of an impact on you than the national government does. And even if you are in the armed services, bases, or within communities, I mean, nearly everybody is impacted by local government more directly than they are by the national and state governments. And of course, local government in the U.S. system is a creation of the state government. Our national constitution only deals with the national government and states. The states then create these localities, and the localities really are a lot of your interaction with government day to day, whether it's trash pickup, whether it's fire service, police protection, street maintenance, a lot of the things that affect your day-to-day life. So that's state and local government. While some of these things are not covered as much by the national media and may not get as much attention on social media as, say, you know, what did former President Trump say last week or something. These have a very direct impact on people's lives.
And talking about having an impact on the individuals' lives, under Proposition 1, it talks about gambling would be the proposition. What does that mean for local charitable events that are going to rodeos or other organizations?
Well, the state constitution is written in a way where any expansion of legalized gaming requires the state constitution to be amended. And this would allow some particular organizations that operate rodeos to have raffles at those events. As the League of Women Voters points out in their voter guide, there's some other sports organizations that already have this sort of treatment. So what that would do is these particular organizations that are named in the proposition would be allowed to hold raffles at their rodeo events. So that would mean they could sell tickets to allow people to have a chance to win a certain prize, and that's a way they can bring in revenue. They obviously try to sell more tickets than the price of the item, so there's a net gain to them. So that would allow another way for some organizations to raise money.
And under Proposition 2, that follows into the bond issues. And a bond issue are applied to ballots when state and local governments are asking voters to approve or deny additional proposed spending. And this falls under transportation for rural or blight areas in the state of Texas. What does that mean for the infrastructure here in Southeast Texas?
Well, what a bond is it's a particular type of spending and appropriation of spending. Whenever a local government, a state government, a national government sells bonds, what they're doing is they're borrowing money from people who buy the bonds. So when you buy a bond, what you're doing is you're lending money to government at an agreed interest rate, and they agree to pay you back on a certain schedule. What this does is it has an impact on how you would be able to sell bonds to put together infrastructure projects. So this has to do with, and of course those have to be approved by the voters. So this has to do with those mechanisms.
Okay. And so would that fall under to like raising taxes? Because I know that's a big issue that people have.
Well, bonds would be, yeah, because those bonds do have to be paid back. So that is a matter of, if voters vote to allow for a bond sale, they're either to be able to pay the bonds off, the government unit in question will have to cut some other service, find some other source of revenue, or raise some existing tax. So yeah, that is relevant there.
And speaking of taxes, under the homestead tax of Proposition 7, they are looking to give a homestead bond tax to limit the surviving spouse of disabled individuals as long as the spouse is 55 years or older. How does that affect or change from the current homestead acts that we have here in Texas?
Because it's lowering the eligibility age for the current program. So that's what's happening there. As currently, it would apply to seniors.
Okay.
As we define them otherwise. So it lowers that to 55.
And another homestead act under Proposition 8 is for surviving spouses of military individuals who have lost their life during the battle or during active duty. How does that reflect on past military families, such as, the 13 that passed away during Afghanistan? One of them was here, from here in Texas. So would that also affect them as well, or is it going forward?
Well, it's based on the wording of the amendment. I'm not sure. It probably, most likely it applies to them as well. It wouldn't only be future deaths. And currently, combat deaths are already covered. What this would do is it would expand that to people who died in the line of duty in other ways as well, and things like accidents or other things that are not classified as combat deaths. And in more recent wars, in Iraq in particular, a smaller percentage of the deaths are combat than they were in Vietnam and some earlier conflicts. So this is just addressing how, in some ways, warfare has changed, and also just the state trying to keep up with that.
Sure. And speaking of the state trying to keep up with changes, we had a lot of changes that affected us during the COVID-19 pandemic. And two of the constitutional amendments that are on this ballot, one pertaining to religion, and the other one is pertaining to families and their residents inside of nursing homes. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those bills will mean for, if passed, what they mean for individuals?
Well, the one that's about nursing homes would add language to the state Bill of Rights, allowing people to designate someone as an essential caregiver. And that essential caregiver would then be able to visit that person in the nursing facility regardless of circumstance. So even when visitors in a general sense are not allowed for safety reasons, this essential caregiver would be allowed to visit that person. So if something else akin to the COVID pandemic occurred in the future, which pandemics are a part of human history, so like Texas is anticipating what happens next time. Hopefully it'll be far into the future. But in the event that happens again, this essential caregiver will be allowed to visit even if general visitation is not allowed. And the other one that's about church services prevents local governments from being able to restrict church services. And this has to do with the early days of COVID. The first couple of weeks, some churches within Texas were not allowed to have physical services. However, that ended pretty quickly, but under this, churches and other houses of worship, synagogues, temples, would not fall under that. So like if there was another pandemic, they would be unaffected in terms of their ability legally to hold services. Some of them obviously would choose not to, but some might continue on.
Okay. Well, Dr. Nelson, I appreciate you for joining us today and helping us better understand the importance of local elections as well as the importance of our 8 amendments. To find out if you are registered to vote or to find your local polling location, you can contact your local elections office. Thank you for watching LUTV News in Focus. To see more content from LUTV News, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.